Before we get into today's show, I want to tell you about a new offering from MD Coaches. Group coaching for physicians is a small, virtual, confidential cohort designed to inspire participants to rediscover personal and professional fulfillment. The next cohort begins on Thursday, October 6th, and runs weekly until November 10th. And you can earn 1 CME credit per session, totaling 6 credits in all. To learn more and to register, visit www.mdcoaches.store. Space is limited, so be sure and register today.
What I realize is that it's not so much that I don't want to have an employer, it's that I recognize that we should be our own employers, and that as physicians, we've lost touch on why we actually went into this in many ways. And
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians. To overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be, visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone. And don't forget, CME credit is available when you listen with us. Just look for CMFI in the show notes to learn how. My guest today is a board-certified family physician with several years' experience in both traditional family medicine as well as palliative care. Most recently, she has focused her interest on direct primary care. So let's hear Dr. Jessica Mendelsohn talk about this new and increasingly popular practice model. It is my great pleasure today to be speaking with Dr. Jessica Mendelsohn up in the great state of South Carolina, just across the line from North Carolina. Jessica, it's so nice to have you on the show today, and thank you for joining us on Prescription for Success.
thank you so much for having me.
I'm looking forward to the conversation. We're going to talk about some of the new and exciting things that are happening in medical practice today, and I'm looking forward to that. But as we always do, I want to begin with your beginnings, and I'd like to know if you can nail it down, at about what age did you begin to take an interest in having a career in medicine?
Really, ever since I can remember, I was 5 years old, and it was Christmas. I was at my grandparents' house in Connecticut, and I remember announcing to the family that I wanted to be a doctor. And
That's a pretty early start.
It was a pretty early start. I had a bit of a hiatus in high school when I sat down with my parents and we talked about careers, and they said, Jess, there's really a shortage of female engineers out there, and you should consider that. And I said, okay, medical school is really difficult to get into. Why don't you think about doing something different? And so in my haste to please my parents, I went and looked at what exactly an engineer is. I don't know that I ever really got my answer, but I did find out my senior year that I did not enjoy physics, nor did I enjoy calculus. So that pretty much nailed that. And I went back to wanting to be a physician. And so really and truly, that never changed.
Well, I'm curious, do you have any idea, other than the fact that they thought you might be more employable, but were you in some way mathematically inclined so that your parents would have thought about that might be a good path for you, or were there engineers in the family? Where did that come from?
There are no engineers in my family, and there are no physicians in my family. I think it came from just me doing well in school. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
always did fine in math. I did great in math. I did fine in physics. I just didn't enjoy it, and I don't
I
think they
understand.
ever saw that part.
Yeah.
I ended up at an engineering college. Actually, as it turns out, I think that was the best thing that could have happened on my medicine quest. But through all of that, I think they just wanted me to think about something else.
Mm-hmm. And that's a reasonable thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other influencers either elsewhere in your family or other places, other heroes that you looked to as the sort of model of what a physician's life might be, or did it just always live in your head?
I think it always lived in my head. There was no particular person, place, idea that comes to mind right now. It was just sort of always there, and it never really left.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk some more about your undergraduate experience at Virginia Tech. I presume there must have been some sort of a pre-med focused curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
You felt comfortable there? You felt like you fit in and you were doing what you were intended to do?
Yes, I always loved it there. When I got there, I had gotten into the engineering school, and quite quickly I realized that's not what I wanted to do. So I moved over into the life sciences and started my degree in biology. I will never forget the first week of college. There was a large auditorium, and there were about 700 students in there. And the professor asked, "How many of you want to go to medical school?" And of those 700, I'm going to say probably 300 or 400 raised their hand. And so, of course, my first thought was, all right, well, here's where I am, and this is what I need to do to make sure I get to where I need to be. By the end of it all, 30 of us went to medical schoal that graduating year.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at the time, there was not
That's
really a
really fascinating.
huge, I know, there's just, at the time, it was before Virginia Tech had their DO school, and most people in state really went elsewhere if they were thinking about going into medicine. So their pre-med advisory program was small. And there was one professor, Dr. Ed Bunce, who really guided the few students that wanted to go into medicine really individually, which turned out to be in my benefit and in my favor. He got to know me well, and I got to know him, and he really helped guide me through those 4 years. While I was there, I also ran on the Virginia Tech Rescue Squad. So that was an incredible experience to be able to
Yeah, that was a good initiation.
Learn some medicine. The squad has been in existence for quite some time now, and they've actually really expanded since I've been there. But we are our campus rescue squad, and I learned all sorts of trauma and different acute medical needs, and it was a great introduction to medicine.
Yeah, I guess so, and I guess it erased any fears that you may or may not have had about what you would happen in rather desperate circumstances. I don't know if you saw any active bleeding, but certainly I'll bet there was some chest pain and I can't breathe issues and maybe seizures and that sort of thing. Is that a lot of what you saw in those years?
Mostly what I saw were drunken college students who had fallen out of their dorm beds that we started IVs on.
That can be traumatic.
It was interesting to see your peers that way. But honestly, we did. I mean, we saw all sorts of different things. And while we were the campus squad, we worked closely with the Blacksburg Rescue Squad and assisted them on different things in the community. So it was an interesting time.
So it sounds like your extracurricular activities, if you will, at Virginia Tech were entertaining, if not educational. But I want to move it along a little bit to actually getting you into medical school. I know you finally ended up at Eastern Virginia Medical School, a relatively new school. Was that where you wanted to be, or did you put lots of applications out there and finally picked one? What was that experience like for you?
It really was where I wanted to be. I was grateful for that. It was about a half an hour from my hometown, so it was nice to be close to home. So EVMS was founded in the 70s. So when I was there, it was roughly 30, 40 years old. And I loved that it was a community-based school. So I, at the time, thought, based on my experience with the rescue squad, that I wanted to go into emergency medicine. And they had a very strong program there. And that's in many ways how I ended up there, being close to family, going into emergency medicine, all of those good things.
What do you think happened that caused you to pivot from emergency medicine into family medicine?
I realized in my third year of medical school that I did not want to be going into the hospital on a holiday or Christmas Eve with my children at home. And
such wisdom for a youngster. I'm impressed.
I value sleep and knew that that lifestyle was not going to be the best for me.
That really is a wise decision. But the next thing in line was family medicine. That was just it, or did you sort of do some suffering before you were able to decide on what it was actually going to be?
Well, in medical school, didn't we all do a little suffering?
Of course.
No, it's interesting. I never in a million years thought I would want to do primary care. That was just not on my radar when I went to school. But when I got there and I realized how versatile family medicine could be, I recognized that it was probably the right thing for me. And when I got to my family medicine rotation and was able to do a lot of acute procedures and meet my patients and recognize how much I really did enjoy relationships with people, it just came very naturally. And from then on, that's what I knew I wanted to do.
And the whole residency experience, we hear lots of stories, and depending upon the specialty, sometimes you're almost guaranteed of a bit of a trial by fire. But from your standpoint in residency as a family practice trainee, were most of the days that you really enjoyed, or were there times when you really felt that you wondered how you were going to get through it? What was the process like for you?
I think a bit of both. I can say that time in my life, both personally and professionally, was really tough. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of loss. And so in many ways, working such long hours was actually good for me. I think it gave me a sense of my hopes and thoughts on what I wanted to do afterwards. I think residency is it's a very difficult, trying time. And unless somebody's been through it, it's really hard to explain.
Yeah,
but,
it really is.
I will say...
Were you married at the time?
No, I was not married at the time, but I met my husband in residency. And I think a lot of people do, because you tend to understand each other and the hours that you're putting in. And,
who else are you going to meet, right?
Right. And so we joke all the time. It was 3 years that I loved and I never want to do again. And I think I just learned so much about myself and again, my goals. It was tough, but it was great.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. When you came to the end of that experience and it was time to be the real thing, did you have a lot of decisions to make, or did you settle on Carmel Family Medicine right out of the box?
You know, I think we work so hard to get into medical school. And then once you're in med school, you work so hard to get the residency you want. And then once you're in residency and you're out, the world is your oyster and you have no idea what to do with it. And I knew early on that I have kind of a penchant for, maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, I don't know, but I really do embrace different things and have a lot of different interests, both within medicine and external to that. And I didn't know how long I would be in family medicine, sort of traditional hospital-owned at that time practice. But I joined Carmel Family. It was a wonderful experience. There were 14 of us. There were 11 physicians and 3 PAs that worked there. And at the time, I really didn't think there was an option to be independent. It was a time when most folks coming out of residency, at least in our region, were owned by hospital systems. Mm-hmm. And I stayed within the system where I trained. And so it felt comfortable. And I knew I'd have a lot of support in a larger practice with physicians that had been there longer. And so I was there for almost 9 years before I left.
Sounds like a good choice. Was it both inpatient and outpatient?
It wasn't. We were outpatient. When I first started, we did see newborns in the hospital, and that stopped probably 3 or 4 years into practice when I was there. Other than that, though, we had hospitalists within our system that saw our patients when they were in the hospital.
But it sounds like that 8 years was a fairly agreeable experience for you. And if I'm wrong, please let me know. But it apparently gave you some time to decide what was going to happen next. Is that sort of the way it rolled out?
It did, and it also gave me a lot of experience in physician leadership and practice management. I was our medical director for the last 3 years while I was there.
It's a good thing to learn.
It was. I think without that experience, I'm not sure I would have had the confidence or felt comfortable opening my own practice. And so I'm very grateful and will always be grateful to have had that experience. I was involved in lots of things outside of the practice too that were hospital-wide initiatives. And so that gave me a broader picture than just the practice within the whole system.
But yeah, you were not done exploring, it appears to me, that a couple of other things in the interim before New South Family Medicine came up. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. So when I mentioned earlier that I had experienced loss, one of my closest friends from growing up passed away when we were young, early 30s, of colorectal cancer. And
My goodness.
the experience with her during the last 6 months of her life was very difficult for her family and for all of us. And I never felt that it was handled necessarily the best way it could have been if there had been discussions earlier when we knew her diagnosis was terminal. And I was that person that had those discussions with her family. So based on that experience, I thought that hospice would be something I would enjoy and would love to be a part of. So after we had our first son, when I was at Carmel Family, I thought, I would like to be part-time. I would like to spend more time with my son, and I would like to explore something new. And I reached out to a colleague who was working for a local hospice, and lo and behold, they needed somebody part-time. So my husband was in practice and the stable one and doing well, and it didn't feel like much of a risk for us, and I was ready. So that's when I went and did hospice work.
And you were there for a while, so it must have felt like you were in the right place at the right time. Am I reading that correctly?
I was, and I miss it. And I still take call occasionally when I can for the group. It will always be a part of who I am and how I practice. And I recently lost my grandfather, who is one of my major father figures. And I've said many times in the last 4 months that hospice led me to that moment. It led me to help him pass peacefully. And for that, I will always be grateful. I love that work, and it will always be a part of how I practice and who I am.
Yeah, I have to think that sort of work has a very informative effect on physicians, most physicians in any case. And even if it turns out that it's not something that you do for the remainder of your professional life, it still really gives you something very substantial that I don't think we see in all physicians, and I think probably makes you a much better family practitioner. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think that it allowed me to see a part of life, and it gave me the privilege of experiencing that part of life with family and with patients in a way that most of us as physicians don't experience. I went into people's homes. I met their families. I watched them, take their last breath on multiple occasions. And it's a very humbling experience that I feel like every medical student and resident should have.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. We've gotten so specialized and so compartmentalized that so many of us really don't have that experience of end-of-life care, and it is so important, I think, in the maturation of whatever medical specialist that you happen to be. So good for you for having that experience, and I can tell from the conversation that it has had a powerful impact on you. But let's hear about the latest chapter, New South Family Medicine. Where did that idea come from?
As I was practicing with hospice, I loved being with families and experiencing patients and their loved ones and getting to know them. And it just really made me think, I miss that. I miss those relationships with people. I miss having conversations with adolescents and people just starting out and middle-aged folks and the whole gamut of what family medicine is. And I knew, though, that if I went back into it, I would not want to do it the same way that I did before, and that I would want to experience it differently. And at the same time, a dear friend of mine was getting ready to open her own business. And I thought, well, I can do that. And So she opened a children's art studio, and I opened New South Family Medicine within a couple of months of each other, and we both still are doing really well. It's kind of funny how that happened.
So I've got a question that just popped into my head, and I really want to know some more about this. So I'm going to ask you to enlarge. The words that you used were, didn't want it to be the same as it was before. What did you want to change?
Oh, physician autonomy, the ability to spend time with patients, the ability to really get to know who I'm talking to and not a revolving door thinking about what was next on my agenda for the day, thinking I don't have time to really get to know this person. It's a very impersonal feeling that I think
It sounds like you found being an employee a little disagreeable. Am I overreading that?
I don't think that you are, and I never really thought of it that way prior to doing this. I just assumed I'd always be working for a larger system. What I realize is that it's not so much that I don't want to have an employer, it's that I recognize that we should be our own employers, and that as physicians, we've lost touch on why we actually went into this in many ways. And I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but we have the capability of creating the type of practice we want. And it just sort of happened naturally when I was coming back into family medicine.
You know, I practiced for 44 years, and when I began, employed physicians were almost unheard of, at least people that were employed by hospitals and healthcare systems and so forth. And when that movement began to blossom and take shape, I was the grumpy old man that was going around saying it's not a good idea, because I think that the instant that a physician works for anybody other than their patient, then this is not good for the patient. Would you agree with that?
100%. And I don't think employed physicians do work. They want to work for their patients. It's not. It's not that the desire isn't there, but really and truly, it becomes both the hospital system and not just one other entity, but hospital systems and insurance companies. And so there's two other toes in the water, if you will, and other interests as opposed to that physician-patient relationship. And what I love so much about this type of practice is when I close that door, it literally is my patient and me. And there's not another soul that we're thinking about unless it's necessary. And it's just changed the way I feel like medicine could be nationally.
Well, I can't tell you how it restores my soul to know that there are people like you who have figured that out. And I really hope this concept takes hold and we can bring the at least family medicine and internal medicine and the primary care specialties back into the hands of the physicians so that the relationship can stay closer to the patient. That can only be a good thing for them. So tell us some more about New South Family Medicine. It's not just New South Family Medicine. It's also a med spa. Tell us about that.
So when I decided to do this, as I said earlier, love all sorts of things. And my husband jokes I'm the only person that can go from a hospice patient to a Botox patient and it feels normal and natural. And it does. It's so funny. It just sort of fell in. I wanted to do something more technical and artistic and very different than anything I had done before. I love procedures. And so I thought that would be a natural way to do that. And with direct primary care, when you reach your kind of capacity to take on patients, that is your revenue. And I wanted another source of that in a more creative way. So that's when I just started dabbling a little bit in kind of injectables and having fun with it. And that's all it was for a couple of years. And last year, I was approached by 3 women who worked together, and they were looking to connect and looking for a place to land to grow their med spa business. And it's exploded since then. And it's been a really fun journey with a group of wonderful people.
Well, it sounds like that it has all the makings of an incredible success, and my congratulations to you for that. It's been obviously quite a rewarding journey for you, and that always makes me happy to see a happy doctor because, as we know, that's not always the case nowadays. Well, Jessica, I've really enjoyed this conversation. You truly have built a remarkable career for yourself, and congratulations to you for that. I really, really enjoyed hearing about it. But what I want to do at this point is what we came here for, and that is I'm going to get out of your way for just a moment, and we're going to hear Dr. Jessica Mendelsohn tell us about her prescriptions for success.
Thank you. So when I think about my prescriptions for success, my mind goes in all sorts of different directions. I think there are a lot of things that we can say help us succeed. And one of those, to me, is actually failure and challenge. And getting up from that and learning from that in the best way that we can is a tremendous skill. It is a tremendous life lesson. So with that, I've always practiced from my heart, and I try to be, in many ways, the same person for my patients that I am for my family and friends, and that is someone that's relatable. And I think when we are relatable, then we come with failure, and that's actually a very good thing. I say all the time that being a physician is a part of my identity and who I am, but it does not define who I am. It is a piece of me, but I'm also a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a friend, I'm a business owner, and I'm a neighbor. And I don't ever want to lose sight of those things. So it's all a part of my person. And I think the last thing to say here is that I will always be a lifelong learner, and that doesn't always mean medicine. I think that with failure comes success, with challenge comes success, and that is because there's a constant place for learning, whether it's business, whether it's medicine, whether it's parenting, it's always there. So surrounding myself with the right people and remaining humble are my prescriptions for success.
Well, Jessica, thank you very much for that. There's a lot of wisdom there, and I'm always impressed when it comes from someone as young as you. Sounds like you've got a lot of success ahead of you as well.
That's so kind of you to say.
Well, again, I thank you for being here. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our audience where they might find you if they're interested.
Sure. I am located in Fort Mill, South Carolina. We are just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in York County, which is just across the border. And my practice is New South Family Medicine and Med Spa. Our website is newsouthfamilymedicine.com, and we are also on Instagram and Facebook at New South Family Med. So we are constantly having fun and putting things out there. So if you ever have questions or are interested in direct primary care, for sure, please don't ever hesitate to give us a call or email us from our website. We are growing, and I think I may have mentioned earlier that my husband is actually leaving his hospital-owned practice and joining me, and we'll be here as well.
I guess that sounds like a good idea. It brings up the question of husbands and wives working together.
Yes.
You guys thought that through?
Absolutely, we have.
I bet you have.
For a very long time, we thought we'd never be able to work together, and we actually worked for competing hospital systems for a long time. So we would joke, no, that would never happen. But honestly, Dave has seen how happy and fulfilled I've been in this space, and he's ready to join, and I'm ready to have him.
I bet it's going to be a big success,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to wish the both of you the best of luck. And thank you very much again for taking the time to be with us on the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We'd really appreciate a review from you, and a 5-star rating helps give our podcast much more visibility, and that helps us reach more listeners. Exclusive content is available on our Patreon page, including membership-only material like personal rapid-fire Q&A sessions with our guests. And to be sure you never miss an episode, visit our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com and become a subscriber. While you're there, you can learn how to get CME credit from CMFI just by listening. Special thanks, as always, to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.